This is modern homesteading. So I was contacted yesterday by a subscriber on Facebook by the name of Adam, and he asked me if I could do a video on sharpening, or the proper sharpening of a Spokeshave. And I thought, well, my Spokeshave actually does need sharpening, and I would be happy to do it. So I'm going to do that today, and while we're at it, we'll do a restoration on this too. This was, many of you guys that have been following the channel for a while remember that this belonged to my grandfather. He was not much of a woodworker, so I don't know how he came about it, but when he passed away last year and I received his things, there were two of these in there, and I had not used one until then. So this is one that I've never really restored or sharpened. I just used it. It was reasonably sharp, so we'll do that today. But before we do that, I want to talk about just a few different sharpening options and stones that you can use. So there's going to be a variety of different things you can use to sharpen these tools, whether it be a plane or a Spokeshave, lots of different things like that. Even drill bits can be done this way. So you can use things like the Spyderco Sharp Maker. I'll cover that in a little bit, but what I'm going to be using today are the Japanese water stones. I really like the Japanese water stones because I just enjoy the process. Usually you're going to have three different stones. You're going to start with about a 600 to 800 grit, which I have here, and then you're going to go to a 1200 grit, and then you're going to finish off with a really fine one. I think the one I have is a 6000 grit. But before you use the Japanese water stones, you need to soak them in water. So I've got a pitcher of water right here, and I've got the coarse stone actually soaking in there. But it's just what's kind of interesting is the stones will dry out, and they're like sponges. And you can see here when you put them in that they will bubble and foam. As I'll just take just a minute right there, but you'll see all those bubbles, and in just 30 seconds or so you'll just hear them hissing and bubbling. You can see it's increasing more and more and more. It seems like it takes about 5 to 10 minutes or so for those stones to saturate, and then they're ready to use. So we'll set those aside, because that's what we'll be using today. But if you don't have those, don't worry about it. There's lots of different other options. Of course, you can use a small stone like this little Norton stone. This is a coarse and a fine India stone on this side. I would say the fine was probably 600 grit, so it's not super fine. Or many of you guys would probably have just these old school traditional sharpening stones, which are also dual grit. I've got a couple of them right here. Here's you can see the coarse, which is really coarse, and then the fine. This is one I got from my grandfather here. This is a real old one. You can see that, look at the contour in it. If I were to put a straight edge on that, you can see the light through that. That's been used to sharpen his pocket knife for a long time. I don't like stones that are worn like that, but I kind of keep it as a memento. And then of course the small stones you can use as well. This doesn't work so good on the chisel grinds. This is a better thing for axes and larger tools, but it can be done. And then of course the Sharp Maker. I have never used a Sharp Maker for this type of a sharpening job, but I have no doubt that you could. It's not ideal. It's definitely not ideal, but it's doable. You can orient the stones in this way like this, and you can take your tool, whatever it may be, and you can work it like this. Not ideal. Actually, not very good at all, to be honest with you. But we're going to be using the Japanese water stones. So let's take one out here and disassemble our Spokeshave and see what we can do. I just kind of wondered on the history of this Spokeshave, where Granddad got it, how old it is. It says number 15 on the back, and I see it has a Stanley Made in USA blade on it. So I've never actually had this apart. There we go. We'll get this nice and cleaned up. There we have the blade. Okay, we can see right there. a good chisel blade. A chisel blade is a blade that's just ground on one side. Nice thing about a chisel blade is that doesn't really take any special skill to sharpen it. It's just so easy because you just hold on that angle. So we can see here through this magnifying glass, you can see that the edges definitely need of sharpening. I can see some really small, I wouldn't say nicks. They are nicks. They're not chips, but they're definitely nicks. And I have noticed that it was not cutting very well the last time I used it, so we will definitely take care of that. But the blade overall looks like it's in really good condition. Stanley, made in USA. Yeah, we'll sharpen this up just to perfect edge, and then we'll take these pieces and we'll steel wool them and clean this up and oil it and really take care of this. Put the spa treatment on it like the Apostle P says with his knife sharpening business. This might sound strange, but I really enjoy the water stone sharpening process. So I've got warm water there in my container, and I'll just keep that handy here where I can keep this wet. You can see that stone is still sponging that water up, so it wasn't quite completely saturated. So what I'm going to do with these planer blades, or any type of a chisel cut blade like that, is I'm going to very carefully tip it up until I have that angle, and just applying a little bit of forward pressure on that leading edge. I'm going to go through here. Oops, I tipped it a little bit. And what this is going to do is, as we cut, it's going to create a little bit of slurry on the blade, and that's good. That slurry acts as a polishing compound, and that's good for what we want here. So after about 25 passes or so, you can actually see some of the stone on that cutting edge there. If we clean that off, we'll start to see, if I can hold this still for you, start to see the polished portions of the blade there. And we know, or I know, that this particular stone is flat because I have flattened it, and we can see right there that the stone is coming in contact. Let's see if I can put there. Right across there where you're starting to see a polish, and then right there. So what we have is kind of a concave shape to this blade, and that's to be understood. I would expect that because that's mostly where the blade is going to be used, on the center. So we'll keep working this down, and we won't move on to our next stone until we get a polish all the way across there that's consistent. So after about 10 minutes on the stone, you can see here that we're getting really close there. So I can get the light right. You see right there in the middle, that area that doesn't have the polish, kind of a bell curve shape like that, means that that's the low point on the blade, so we're still working that down. One thing I have found with sharpening with Japanese water stones is it really tells you how flat your blades are. I have even knives that are ground to really exact specifications, like the Spyderco Bushcraft. Even now I'm still working on this edge where I still have high points all across there. Even with their tight tolerances and the way they grind, it will just be years and years and years until I get a perfectly honed edge on there. And why that's important is that if you have high spots, as you push and cut the steel on the water stone, you're not coming in full contact with all the edges of the blade. So it's definitely a labor of love that can take many years to accomplish. I have noticed though with handmade knives that it's even worse, to the point where you almost can't even use Japanese water stones because they're too wavy. But this here, about 5 more minutes here, and then we'll take it up to the 800 grit. If you'd like to watch part 2 of this video, go ahead and click on the thumbnail. If you're not already a subscriber, click on the red subscribe button, and that way you'll be sure not to miss any of the new uploads. And those of you who are subscribed, please take a moment and click the thumbs up. It really helps.